what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we are back on Hack the Box. Now, for those of you that know me for a while, you know how I feel about Hack the Box. You know what I think. I think they have good content. I think they have good text content. But anyway, I got a clear snapshot of what I am allowed to upload and what I am not, because I was not clear on it before, but I am now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the modules over time that I can upload on the Academy. Okay, then we might go back to some Hack the Box free boxes and things like that, or retired machines. But right now I want to do the Academy because I think a lot of people are hyped about the Academy stuff. So first things first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these. I'm not going to do them all. I'm going to do one video at a time so that you can make them digestible and that you have time to play with them before the next one, because I think that's something a lot of people do incorrectly, meaning I think a lot of people will do this module, go through it, do the 2 examples, move on to the next one and go. I don't think that's not how you should learn. It should never be how you learn. You should be taking these and practicing them, using them quite often. And I'll tell you, a couple of these I actually do use quite often. So we're going to cover it. So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing is, this is the Windows one. So this is Windows File Transfer. So think about it. How many times have you, on a CTF or on a pen test or whatever, anything you need, you've been on a machine that maybe you got a remote shell into, or maybe you are just RDPing into, whatever, and you need to get a file over to it, right? How do we do that without A, setting off 50 security alarms, B, without making it like insanely hard, meaning I'm like standing up a new server and all this other crap, or C, still making it somewhat secure, right? So there's a couple different things, and we're going to show you some of these methods and some really simple one-liners that I use all the time. So this is the Astaroth attack specifically, and I'm just going to walk you through it here. So the whole point of this Astaroth attack, you can see, is they injected malware into the user init process. So look at how many times they had to download different files to make this work, and this was to obfuscate it, right? So what they did was they emailed with a link, right? That link had a zip file in it that then had an LMK file in it that ran as a batch file. And what that did, and obviously keep in mind this is to obfuscate and all this stuff, right? It made the WMIC download another XSL file that then had obfuscated JavaScript in it that started another WMIC download that had an XSL file in it with JavaScript, of course, that then, check it out, had bits admin download another file, which was the payloads, and then it called on certutil. So keep in mind, this is also living off the land. These are all things that you can use to decode the payloads, right? And while this is happening, look at the, there's something else happening, and we'll cover it. So that payload is these DLL files where they inject them into the process, right? And then finally that creates a DLL file right here in the middle. And then it uses reg server 32 to actually run the user init process, hollow out the process, inject their own DLL, reflective DLL loading, and run the Astra. Now, this sounds super complex, but if you look at it, really, it's not. I mean, granted, I'm sure the technicality aspect of it is very, it's very technical. But my point is, if you look at it, it's not that complex from a process overview, from a workflow solution, right? You just have a download, another download, another download to obfuscate all this. Okay, cool. So that's not super complex, but if I need all those different ways to download files, I need to know how to do that, right? So we have download operations. Here's our attack machine. We've got to get through a firewall. Well, how do we get through a firewall? As we know, most all firewalls allow HTTP and HTTPS to come out because that's the way that people work. So you have to be able to work that way. So let's go ahead and look at it. Depending on the file size we want to transfer, we can use different methods. So base64 string copy. This is very common. It's very common for base64. It's super common. There's a couple of reasons. One, web applications can handle it because it's all regular characters, right? It's DNS can use it. It's pretty much, I don't want to say universal because it's not universal, but it is a very good way to encode your payloads and actually get it in and out of without getting caught or without setting off a lot of alarms. Now, the other piece is a lot of people say, well, I know this security tool and it will catch base 60. Correct. I'm not saying base 64 is encryption. It's not. I'm saying it's still a very good method to take a file and get information somewhere, right? That's all I'm saying. Now, another thing it's very good at is, look at this. Here is the MD5 sum. Okay. Well, how do we get this sum, okay, to what we need? Which, in this case, you can see we catted the ID RSA file. So this is the file that you need, right? And what they're saying is to make sure that the file you download is the file that you're looking at. So cat ID RSA, then they base 64 encode it, and they write it out. Here it is. Look how long that is, right? Perfect. Well, now you can go back onto this system, and you can do the same thing and get the same file, right? Perfect. Why does that matter? Because this is Linux, this is Windows. We know Linux and Windows are not the same. We know Windows is not case sensitive. We know Linux is, right? But we need it to be case sensitive. We need the exact thing. So right there's one solution, right? We know web applications won't take certain characters, right? There's another solution because these are all ASCII characters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to go into why we base 64 encode stuff on this. But then you can see here, now we have Windows file transfer methods. So now we're starting to get into how do we transfer the file. And then they're saying from there, they validate that the hash is what it started out, which was up here. So now they transferred it, there's the base 64 encoding. And then once they transferred it, they wrote it all, there you go. Convert it back from base 64 to its original, and then check the hash, and boom, hash matches. Perfect. Great. Let's go on. Now, this one, what this is, downloaded cradles. I'll show you. It says, where did he have it? Somewhere in here. I'll find it. But anyway, PowerShell web downloads. Most companies allow, which I just said, outbound traffic. Okay, perfect. So what if you have other things that you're allowed? FTP, SSH, HTTP, HTTPS. We can use all of those to actually transmit information, download files, things like that. So here you have the method is open read, returns data from a resource as a stream, blah, blah, blah. You can read these if you want. These are the actual Microsoft documentation, which I recommend you read if you don't know how it works. But the one we're focused on here is download file or download string. Okay, so PowerShell download file method. So most of you know what wget is and things like that, but most of you won't know that there's actually other ways of using it. And when I say using it, I'm saying use things like new object net web client. So we can specifically we can specify the class name net.webclient and the method download file, which we just covered, right? Keep in mind wget and things like that are shortcuts to this basically. So you can see here's the example: new object net web client download file .download file. So just like if you've ever done any sort of coding, it's pretty standard. And then you see target file URL and the output name. That's what the example looks like. This is what it looks like in practice. New object, net web client, download file, and then you add whatever. Here they're using PowerView PS1, and then they're naming it PowerView PS1. Boom, and it'll be downloaded. Easy enough. Now the next one we're looking at, download file async. And if you look up here, it downloads a string from a resource without blocking the calling thread. Okay, perfect. So we have two methods. One doesn't block the calling thread. Perfect. Now we can move on to the next. Keep in mind that we're going to go through all the examples of what they are because you may have to use them all for separate things, right? So now, fileless method. If you don't know what this here is going to call this, and like it has here, it has an output file. It's going to put it right here and name it that, and then you have to go run that, right? That's how it works. You download the file, then you have to go run it. Well, that's what we just talked about. Now, fileless attacks work by using some operating system functions to download the payload and then execute it directly. It doesn't download it and save it into this nice spot that you can go down or that you need to go execute later. It's going to invoke it right away. So you have IEX, which is invoke expression, new object net web client, download string, just like normal. And they're going to download this. Looks like now they're downloading Mimikatz. So invoke Mimikatz PS1. So when they do this, you notice there is no output file. Why? Because it's going to just run automatically. It is not going to actually download and sit there, right? It's going to run it automatically. So that's really, really nice, okay? Because it runs directly in memory. So this is something you probably ought to keep in mind. Now, this is the way I personally do this one, and that's because I'm just a Linux guy, and it's more native to Linux to me. So you just run it just like normal, download string, blah, 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 but then you pipe it to IEX or invoke expression. So that's personally how I do it. Again, no way's better. It's just the way I do it. Now, from PowerShell 3.0 onwards, the invoke web request commandlet is also available, which is here rather than the invoke expression. You're invoking the web request, okay? But it is noticeably slower at downloading files. Okay, so now here's where you can use IWR, curl, and wget instead of invoke, and it'll be faster, right? So you say what wget, HTTP, blah, 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 whatever, and then you say out file power view PS1. So keep that in mind. There you go. You can use invoke web request instead of this new object net web client. And then here, let's look at some issues that we'd get, right? One of the errors we're going to get is, what if it's the first time you're ever using Internet Explorer? Now, some of you might say, what are they talking about? I haven't seen that error ever. If you've ever been a server admin of any type, right, you will see this error every time you log into a server, especially if you have someone that's never clicked OK. If you just keep saying ask me later and exiting, because most servers, at least initially, you're not using the internet on it, right? You're going to keep seeing this. Well, this will cause errors because you're trying to download it and it can't do that. So how do we bypass it? Use basic parsing. So here we have the invoke web request, blah, 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 power view PS1, and we're doing the invoke expression. So we're trying to run it directly. The response cannot contain content cannot be parsed because Internet Explorer engine is not available. Okay. Or Internet Explorer's first launch configuration is not complete. Perfect. Let's skip that. Invoke web request, use basic parsing, IEX, and it runs just fine. So now another error in PowerShell downloads is related to the SSL TLS secure channel. So this is something you probably see all the time. You go to a website, says, hey, be careful. Whoa, we've got a, security's not, or certificate's not trusted. That could mean A, it's expired, B, it's legitimately not trusted, or C, it's a self-signed cert, or whatever, right? So there's a million reasons that can happen. But how do we get around that? Because if we're trying to run invoke expression, which a lot of times we're going to be doing this without a certificate, we need to know how to get around it. Well, look right here. We can set the server certificate validation callback to be true so that it actually runs for us. So really nice. And you can see, we get here, the underlying connection was closed, blah, blah, because it's not connected. Well, we can run that and we can actually validate the cert ourselves manually. Now, that's how you do some HTTP requests or HTTPS. What if we want to use SMB? Now, a lot of you have probably seen SMB transfers and things like that, but a lot of you probably haven't seen this. And what it is here we're going to use SMB, which is how, the file transfers. And basically, you can see it enables applications user to transfer files from remote servers. Okay, perfect. We know what SMB is at this point, or else we probably shouldn't be on this box yet. So we can use SMB to download files from Pwnbox easily. We need to create an SMB server in the Pwnbox, okay, using server.py. So what we do is, looks like, okay, create the SMB server. So we're going to say sudo impact SMB server share SMB2 support. So what we're saying is, sudo run the SMB server, name it share, which you can name it whatever, support SMB2, and then here it is, temp SMB share. That's where it's going to be mounted. Okay, to download a file from the SMB server, you just simply go to it, just like a regular SMB, right? You can use SMB client or whatever. But here they're just running copy, and they're saying copy it from, and here they're using Netcat. They're bringing Netcat over to the machine that they took over so that they can actually use it to keep progressing, right? Keep pivoting around. So they're just taking it directly from there, and you can see they connected to the share right there. Now, new versions of Windows block unauthenticated guest access. So it's not going to allow you, no matter what, to connect to guest access, right? Which in this case is what they're doing. So all we have to do here is run the same thing, but just set a user and password. It's that simple, right? A lot of you might say, well, why do we need to set a user and password? Because here they're counting it as a guest or anonymous login, right? Here, even if you put test to test, it's still anonymous. Windows recognizes it as a user login and password, so they think it's legit. So now you just say net use, and you say the same thing. We want to connect to the net, to the share, and we're going to use user test, and then once we're connected, boom, copy in netcat exe. So you can see they use netuse to mount it to InDrive. Boom, netcat exe. Okay, and you can see they said you can also mount the SMB server if you receive an error when you use copy file name. So like here, they actually mounted it to the InDrive. You can mount it to whatever you want. Okay, so now FTP. So we've covered 2 protocols already. We're moving, if we needed to move files, we already have 2 protocols we could use. And so now we have installing the FTP server Python 3 module. This is sudo pip3 install pyftpd library. And all this is, you start it, sudo python 3 tac im pyftpd library port 21. If any of you guys have ever used the Python simple server, which we're going to use here shortly, very similar. The only difference is FTP. It's not going to use HTTP. So keep that in mind. You're using 2 different protocols, but same. Look at that. That's just a little one-liner. I could use that all day long. After the FTP server setup, we can perform file transfers using pre-installed FTP client, just like normal. We can say new object, net web client, download file, and we use FTP here instead of HTTPS. And we say FTP file.txt, and we name it something, whatever. And boom, look at that. We now have FTP transfer. This looks a lot less suspicious than maybe large transfers of HTTP documents, right? If you have FTP in your environment. Create a command file for FTP client and download the target file. So this is just a script that's going to create the file for FTP client and download the target file. So what does that mean? Open 192 that's the first FTP file. User anonymous, echo binary, blah blah blah. He's setting it all up. Then he runs FTP, and then he says open the file because it's just running. You can see FTP command.txt. It's gonna go ahead and once it connects, open, log in, user, get file, So instead of manually doing it, they scripted it. I don't really know. This is some of the things that Hack the Box does that I don't think they do very well, and that is like here they're convoluting something. It doesn't need, you don't need to script this piece. I get that you can. I know that it's easier, but you're convoluting the concepts here, in my opinion, right? Why did you show us all these one-liners and show us how to actually, and this is me ranting, so I apologize, but why are you showing us all these new cool ideas? And then you're like, and then here we used echo to edit the FTP command and blah, blah. Why are you throwing that in there here? It's kind of, it just seems out of place to me. I'll say that. So when I'm teaching, I don't like to muddle the waters there. I would do a scripting class to teach that piece rather than just a FTP class. But anyway, sorry about that, guys. It just drives me nuts because my head doesn't work that way, and that's how that's where Hack the Box I feel like misses the mark. And I like Hack the Box, so I'm not hating on them. I'm just trying to critique. Okay, so now there's also situations such as password cracking, analysis, exfiltration, where we must upload files from our target machine into our attack host. So let's say we're sitting in our machine that we already took over and we need to get files out. How do we do that, right? Well, you could do these same things if you had FTP, Python 3, all that stuff, right? But we don't need to do that yet. We can encode the file using PowerShell. So we can say convert to base64, get content. There's the etc host file, and then encode. And then you can see here, we get the encoded string, this really long string, get file hash, select the hash. Okay, and that's because we want to make sure there's nothing wrong with it. We copy this content and paste it into our attack host. Okay, so we say we copy this content and paste it into our attack host. Use the base64 command to decode it. Yep. So we got the whole thing, and then we say base64, and then we put it into hosts. Now, why do we do that? Because we don't have to. Technically, we can just copy and paste this out, and we're getting the information, and it's not as suspicious. But there's other methodologies. I wouldn't say use this for exfiltration because it's not very secure, but they're showing you how to encode it one side, decode it on the other. You get the same hash. Everything's good, right? So now let's go to PowerShell. Doesn't have a built-in function for uploads, but we can use invoke web request and invoke rest method to build our upload. Okay, perfect. So for our web server, we can use the upload server, an extended module of Python. Now, I will say this. I don't really think this upload server is necessary. If you've ever used Python Simple Server, it's very similar. It'll do the same thing. Now, you can use this if you want, but I'll show you why you don't need to use this later. So what we do is we can go here. Now we can use a PowerShell script, ps upload ps1, which invokes REST method. Okay, so here's the invoke REST method. The script accepts two parameters, file, which we use to specify the path, and URI. So we could click on this and it'll ask us for the file. Well, we have to put in the file and the URI or URL, and then we'll upload our file. Okay, so it says the server URL where we upload our file. Let's attempt to upload the host from our Windows host. Okay, so here we invoke expression. We say new web client, download string, perfect. And it looks like we downloaded psupload.ps1, so we actually grabbed this file. Okay, now we invoke file upload. The URI we use is the upload server, okay, Python simple server that we can upload to. Okay, perfect. So the difference is the Python simple server, if you've ever used it, can download. The Python 3, you can upload. Pretty simple, pretty easy, right? I think they're both useful. And then you can see here, we say upload, and then we tell it what file we want to upload. So pretty easy. Right off the bat, we tell it we want to download this psupload.ps1, which is just a script that we can actually use to upload files. And then if we have a place to put them, we put it there. We give it the file and the URL. Easy peasy. So, all right, let's keep going. Now we say, okay, PowerShell base64 web upload. So this, again, pretty simple. We're going to say B64 is get content, Etsy host again, and they're going to encode it. And then, whoops, and then here, invoke web request, the URI, 8000, method, post, and the body, they're putting that $64, B64. So right off the bat, there's another web upload. They're putting it there. Okay, cool. So now we can say we catch the base64 data with Netcat and use the base64 application with the decode option to convert the string to the file. Okay, so all we're going to do here, Netcat's set up. We accept, Netcat gave us the file, right? You can see it as it comes in, and that's a snippet. And then here, echo base64, which is this, and then base64 decode, blah, blah, and write to the hosts. Perfect, pretty simple. Now, SMB uploads. Okay, so now we have SMB uploads because we did the SMB downloads before. But here's something interesting. An alternative is to run SMB over HTTP with WebDAV, an extension of HTTP. So you can see if it can't find SMB, it will use HTTP. That's very interesting. It's very interesting. Why is that interesting? Because you can actually use SMB, and guess what? As you can see in this packet capture, it switches over to HTTP. That's pretty interesting. All right, so now installing WebDAV Python module. So we say sudo pip install wsgi-dav. All right, and then here, this is how easy it is. Using the WebDAV Python module, you use it, you give it a host, you give it a port, you say, hey, I want the root to equal temp. So I want the root directory to equal the temp. And then authorization is anonymous. So you can just log in, right? So now we can say, hey, dir, meaning we want to connect to the share using the dav www root directory, which just gives us the root, okay? Has no label. And look at this. They connected right to it. And boom, we're connected using SMB. Very nice. So why is that important? Because then we can go over here and we can copy that dav root, which is in this case the root folder, and we can say put this here, basically copy it over, right? Very nice. So then FTP uploads, again, sudo python 3 impy ftpd library, same Python library we had before, port 21. The only difference is we now say write. If you remember the other one, if we go back up, let's go back up to look at it. I know we had it. Here it is, port 21, but there's no write here, right? There's no write. It's just regular. So now we're doing upload, so we can write to it. So very nice. We can write to that. Now let's use PowerShell upload function to upload a file to our FTP server. Well, here's our FTP server sitting here looking pretty, waiting around. We now say, hey, take this FTP hosts, send it over, right? And what's it going to do? It's going to take that FTP hosts and send it over. So perfect, nice, good to know. Okay, and it's going to say C Windows System 32 driver, blah, 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 blah. Perfect. Create a command file. So again, you can create the command file that will do it for you, and you're going to put it here. You can see put C Windows System 32 driver etc hosts, and it will put it there for you, because here you're actually connecting to it, but you don't have to do that. You can actually just create this file and blah, 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 boom. So recap, how do we do this? Well, let's do it. Let's hop into it. So there's two questions it asks. The first one is download the file flag.txt from the web root using wget from the pwn box. So I'm going to give you guys a scenario here, right? So we're here, we're sitting here. Don't worry about this yet because that's the RDP in. So we're sitting here and download the file flag.txt from the web root using wget. We're sitting here and we have a machine that we've taken advantage of. And we know that a server or service, excuse me, is sitting on it that we want to take advantage of. Okay, well, what if we want to put Mimikatz on it? Or what if the opposite? What if that server we actually have access to some files we shouldn't, right? In this case, that file is called flag.txt. Okay, well, how do we get that to our machine? Well, if we can host it correctly, which you saw all the different ways we could host it, they've already hosted it for us. So this 10.10.129.55 here, we can say wget, and it's not going to work, so wget http 10.10, what did I say? 10.129 10.129.201.55, and we know it's called flag.txt. So if we can host it, we can just ask for it. There it is, flag.text.1, and that's because I already had it on there. So we say flag.text.1, we cat it, there you go. Pretty easy right off the bat, right? So that seems easy enough. So we know how to grab a file, and I know that sounds super simple and easy, but how many times, for instance, right now, it says upload the attached file name upload.winzip. How do I get that winzip over here? I really don't want to go and log into HackTheBox on their HackTheBox machine and all this jazz. So what if I just go copy link and I say the same thing, and I say, hey, wget, and of course it's not copying. Copy link address. I'm going to kill it. Copy link address, and then I will open a text file over here, make sure it's on there. Okay, so it's actually, so I just copied it over to a Word document. I'll just type it in manually because it's not, the copy paste isn't actually working properly. So we just say wget academy.hackthebox.com/storage/modules/24/upload win.zip. Okay, look at that. I have win.zip. So now we can just go over here and open up the actually, we don't have to open anything because we need to get that win.zip over here, right? Because that's what it says. Upload the attached file name win.zip. So we can do a couple of things, right? We can just say Python 3 tacm http.server. This is a simple server. And look, it's serving the port or the HTTP service over here. Okay, so the difference between this and the upload server is we can't upload files to this, we can only take them. So right here, we can go over here And we could just go on here and we could just go to the website, or we could go to PowerShell and request it, because keep in mind, when you have a Windows or when you have a shell, typically you're not going to have a browser. So we can just go and say wget or whatever onto the PowerShell. But just to show you guys kind of what's happening, 10, 10, 14, 14, 8,000, we can just go right here. We can say enter. And yes, this is a little slow, but you can see we got a request. Now we go down here, we go to upload WinZip. We're going to save it. So right off the bat, we transferred the file. Real easy, right? And I know it said upload the file to it, but why? I'm a very big advocate. Do it the easiest way. So some of you may say, well, it asked you to upload it, da da da. I know it did, but I'm going to do the same thing you're going to do if you upload it, but I'm going to do it the way I want to do it, the more efficient way. Right? So now that we're on here, I want to show you guys, because now we've got a little bit bigger space here. So now we're on here. Here's the upload WinZip. We're going to extract it all here. And I'm just going to extract it. Okay, so now upload underscore win right here. We can open it. Okay, perfect. It's just a random hash. Let's see what it says. It says run hasher upload win.txt. Okay, so now we can just say, now did it say in the command prompt, or did it say, didn't say. So we'll just open PowerShell and see what happens. Okay, so we're going to go in here, and it may have to switch to a command prompt. And the RDP box might be slow. If you guys are wondering how I RDP'd in, all I did was go to right here, Remina on the machine, remote desktop, and log in. Okay, here we go. So now we're going to say hasher upload. Come on, baby. All right, was it upload? What was the name of the file? Hasher upload WinZip. Okay. Upload. Oh, we're in the wrong directory, so we're going to go CD downloads. I apologize. Now we say hasher, and I know this seems very small. It probably is very small to you guys. But I'm not going to, we can go to edit, properties. I'll make it bigger for you guys here. There we go. Okay, so all we did was CD into downloads, and if we go into downloads, we see the upload win. We just say hasher upload win, and this will run the command that's needed to decode our flag that we need here. Could not find the file. That's because it's a directory, and I, for some reason, did not go into it. So upload. Now we do the same thing, but we say hasher.txt, and we let that run, and look at that, we get a totally new hash. We go over here, there it is, F45 da 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 da. There you go, easy peasy. Now the optional exercise I'm not going to walk through because these are optional. You should go through and try all of these. Try them all. They give you a box. Go ahead, try them all. They're all really good, really useful for different scenarios. Then think of ways that you could use them in your everyday pen testing, security, even just IT. Think of the ways you can do them in CTFs. They're all very useful. Not every box will have Python on it. Not every box will have SMB. Not every box will have FTP. Not every box will have HTTP, etc., etc. So make sure you know how to use them all. And you don't have to memorize them. You can make a cheat sheet and then also just know how to use them, right? So think about it. Tell me what you guys think. And then next week, we're going to go through the next section. So hopefully you guys like it, and hopefully you guys like the content and the Hack the Box stuff. So thanks.